Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Chat on Sunday. And today we are chatting with Dave. So it is a recorded version. It is not a live version because he is across the world. I want to introduce you, though, to Dave Johnson. Dave has a background in shamanism, quantum healing, and channeling. He has two YouTube channels, which I can't even imagine. Two YouTube channels. One is Moonride, and the other is Pyramid 4, which we are going to definitely talk about. But I wanted to start with you, Dave, if you could. Let's start from the beginning and kind of where you started spiritually, what brought you into the spiritual world, and where this began for you.
Okay, so just gonna make the real endeavor to not ramble on because I sometimes tend to do that and not repeat myself.
Ramble away. This is we're
Okay,
just chatting.
so let's see. There's so many things to tell you. I suppose like many people in your audience, these things happen and I didn't really have any context to put them. Sort of magical things happened, and I didn't really have any. My parents did not have a religion. They're totally agnostic people, which in some ways was really good because when I came at this stuff, I didn't have any premature baggage. I didn't have any information about it. It was just all new for me. So a couple of things happened as I was a young person, not a jillion things, but a few things that I noticed and other people noticed. I studied, I minored in philosophy in college because I was interested in a mystical experience that I'd had and I didn't know what it was. And I was just in a car
Oh,
one
okay.
day and I just felt this. My brother was driving and I just felt this. There was no reason for me to feel this inner peace, just this. Everything is this exactly the way it's supposed to be. All the challenges are just what they're supposed to be. And there was just this moment of inexplicable moment
Okay.
of what they call satori sometimes.
Okay.
Many years later, I was in a class. I was in a Zen Buddhism class, and the teacher, somebody asked about satori, and he said, "I don't know. It never happened to me. But does anybody in class ever feel that?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." I look around expecting all the other hands to go up, and I was the only one
Oh,
who had
wow.
experienced that. And I'm like, wow, these people are in this class, even though they haven't experienced that. Like, how intriguing. But and he said, like, yeah, that's the definition. You got it. So that was like kind of my first indication that there was magic out there. There was this kind of
Right.
moment where you feel really just connected to the universe and you're not worried about problems and you can't explain it to people because it's something
Mhm.
so total that you can't really explain it. After college,
Right.
I wanted to be very real and I wanted to not just be a talking philosopher but a doing philosopher, and so I joined the Peace Corps, and I was really guided to a particular place in Hungary called Vats,
Mhm.
where everything happened, and it was like it was a great kind of almost like a home. I'm sure I lived there before, homecoming type feeling. I met just wonderful people, and they connected to more wonderful people, and I saw a really significant shaman. He's, I think, the best that I've ever encountered.
Mm.
And I knew right away, I'm like, this guy's got the message that I'm supposed to hear. And he could totally recognize me in the crowd. It was almost like I was speaking to him without words, which in Hungarian, is a really hard language. So at some
Yeah.
point, stopped translating because I was really bad in the beginning, and just like, stop, just get it, just understand. And I did, right? I started to just understand what he was saying. It's
Mm.
this bizarre language that takes years and years and years to even to have a conversation in. So that was the next portion. I don't want to make it all rosy either. There were some really tough bits of life in between. And I say that because I think it's really important for all those people out there who are on this path to know there's some really hard parts. You have to really confront your ego. You have to have the same problems everybody else has. You have to have a job and make money. It's not like
Right.
it's not like an easy path for most people. And I would say that's true of my clients. They have been through a lot of stuff. And after that, I really didn't know what to do with shamanism. I know I was interested, but I moved into, and I had started tarot cards maybe 15 years before, and I just did them for myself. I didn't really read them for other people. Um, I knew I was really interested in this kind of work, but it took me a long time to find it. I worked as an English teacher for many years, English as a second language, really trying to find like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this spiritual work and like have it be a job? And it really wasn't until I got to Australia, I was still teaching. One day the job just did not work out, and I literally turned on the telephone, I literally turned on YouTube, and I started watching, and Linda G came up, and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. And Lena came up, and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting, and she's really funny. And then got a couple other people came, Rosie came up, all those people who were in the beginning. And I'm sorry if I know I've left some people out, but I was just right away, I was just like, oh, I thought I was kind of arrogant to suppose that I would be able to do this. I was like, well, Dave, come on, how pretentious are you that you think you could do that? But I kept getting this channel, you're going to channeling. And it was like it was almost audible, but not. So I finally tried it with my partner. It's like, okay, ask some questions. We'll see if I can answer them. And they were remarkably accurate. He is reasonably skeptical. He doesn't believe it's nonsense, but he doesn't believe as much as we would. And but the questions were, my answers were accurate. So then, something to this. And I managed to get a hold of Lena Rodriguez, and I did a reading for her. She was extremely generous because she is extremely generous, and she said just like this. Asked her. I said a couple things like, "Yeah, was it this? Was it this? Did you do this?" And she goes, "I think you got it, kid." just, just like Lena would. And so thereafter, she had me on her show the next week, and there it is. Bob's your uncle. I within a week, I had viewers on a new job.
I think of all the people you've reached and all the people you've helped, and I wonder how many people out there struggle with that first bout of imposter syndrome that you dealt with, that
Mhm.
part of you that says, who do I think I am thinking I can do this? And
Yes.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think that when people can get through that first kind of um whatever that is, that first kind of block, because even though it's something spiritual and even though your guides are rooting you on, you still come across these ego walls that you kind of
Mhm.
have to push through. And
Mhm.
so do you remember how you dealt with that, or what the self-talk was to help you get through that? Did you meditate? Did you talk to your guides, or was it you having to confront your own stuff?
It was all of those things. I massively meditated. I, at that point, I was meditating. I wasn't working. Now there was kind of an impetus. My partner wasn't just going to sit around and wait for me to find a job. He was like, TikTok, Dave. You gotta do something, right? I'm not going to do this forever. Let you watch YouTube videos and tell me you're going to do that, and we're not waiting all day long. So I really had to. I did have to be very focused. um, One thing that did work for me, and I swear it brought me to Australia, was the whole work on positive thinking.
Mm.
And I tend to call it more positive feeling because I have my own method that I use. But I did that every single day. I spent seven, and you don't need to spend a long time doing that. A couple of minutes, seeing yourself doing the job, and you're showing your feelings. I did that, and then I would meditate for at least half an hour. I'd go halfway through the day. I'd meditate again for another half hour. I would be meditating any chance I got. And in between meditating, I would be, cleaning the house because that is also kind of meditative, and I wanted to feel like I was contributing something. But, I'm really glad you asked that question because I didn't think about it so much. I think I did all of those things. I really do recommend meditation. And if you can go into nature for a couple of days and get to the point of silence, because the first 24 hours you're still thinking about stuff, I really recommend that. But I think it is super helpful also to have somebody like the slightly skeptical partner who you do that for,
Right.
because
Right.
he wasn't feeding me any answers. I mean, it was pretty, shot in the dark stuff. So, don't hesitate out there, to find somebody who's going to give you an honest answer. Lena was a great
Right.
example. He was going to tell me if I had no business doing this work, and you can watch her videos and tell she's not gonna lie to you. That was really helpful. And before that, I did do some predictions. I've also had 20 years of, shamanism behind me. And when I say
Mhm.
that, it was mostly just, hey, come over to my house and we'll sit in the circle. I didn't really, I think I got $100 once, like I didn't really get money.
Right.
So I did have some background, and it was unpaid background.
Mhm.
I really feel like the time's right, and the time's right, and you'll know it. I would say to people too that if you hit these barriers, if you hit these walls, just ask yourself why. It's just trying to level you up. You
Right.
know, we have to come to this, and I often talk to clients where they also have this imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
They don't really believe that they could have been that person in that last lifetime, even though they're in hypnosis and that's what they're seeing. They're hesitating to say that.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's a normal thing that people have imposter syndrome. And it's a good thing, because I think we do have to sit there and question ourselves. We
Right.
should make sure it's not all about our ego. We should make sure it's not for the manipulation of others. But those people who are having the imposter syndrome, in a way, are like the ones who should do it, because they're the ones that are going to keep reflecting and make sure that it's. I just had a regression, and I did one specifically because I wanted to speak to Dolores Cannon, who,
Mm.
sort of the quantum healing queen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love her books and all that stuff. And as I did that, she was so sympathetic and very helpful, and very much guiding, But even the person who's there in the hypnosis, they can't believe that it's true. They can't believe that they're really doing that. And there has to be, and this is something Dolores Cannon said, it's all about the balance of, here I'm doing the spiritual work, but I live in a capitalist society and I gotta be paid. And
Right.
she's
Right.
like, it's always going to, your whole life is always going to be, as you experience it, as many of your viewers, to what degree should we go for, I'm going to make $100,000 this year, I'm going to manifest that. And to what degree should we go, well, I'm also here to be of service. It can't all be about the money. And it's just
Right.
this constant balancing act, as I'm sure you've noted, that everybody goes through every day of their lives if they're living in a capitalist society. But you and I have to do that with a sort of spiritual product.
Right.
How is motherhood valued in a financial sense? How much money should you get for that? It's a lot, but society isn't necessarily going to give that to you. So it is really important that we have a critic here to some degree, and we have a more optimistic person to some degree, and that we just continue to work through those two parts.
Yeah. It is
Yeah,
because it always it just seems like, and I don't think I really don't think they fit. Spirituality and money, just they just kind of hit each other. It's just like it's the reality that we live in
yeah,
while we're here, and that's just the way it is. And our guides know that. I've
yes,
many times in readings, it's like they know we have to eat and we have to have shelter and we have to, you know, yeah, so it is one of those things that I think everybody has to contend with at some
Yeah.
point if they want to do this all the time. And that was my dream, just to do, I just want to do my spiritual stuff all the time. That's what I was thinking. And that's it. Um, so let's talk about your move into politics, right?
Mm,
Um, what were your concerns at the time that prompted you to start making these predictions? And
mm,
what were you hoping to do for the collective when you started to do these predictions? And I know firsthand it's really scary to put yourself out there like that, because you've got these very passionate people on both sides, or
yeah.
people that are very whatever passionate about their views and stuff. I wasn't sure how it would be received, or what would happen. It just, I kind of left it in my guide's hands and thought, I want the people who need to find me. That was always kind of my mantra. I still do that today. Whoever needs to find me, find me. But what did you have to work through, and what drew you to do that, to make that, to use your skills that way?
Hmm. Well, there were these great examples, Lena and Linda and others, first of all, who were doing that and, maintaining a lot of integrity while doing it. So
Mhm.
I had these great examples. But I'll tell you, one of my first political predictions was 3 days before Trump was elected. And I'm standing out at this beach and I'm like, that rock over there, I could just stand on that rock over there and I'd be fine. The waves won't hit it. And just then, a huge rogue wave, comes, and if I'd been standing there, I would have been knocked off and probably seriously injured. And I had this, I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna win. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening, but he's going to win. And I knew in that moment that was another moment that made me decide. I'm like, how do I know this? But 3 days beforehand, I absolutely knew. And on the day that Trump was appointed, because let's remember he was not elected, he I went to bed. My partner's like, maybe it won't be so bad, and I'm like, yes, it's going to be just as bad as I think it's going to be. A year later, he's like, you were right. But I was just frankly worried. I was worried about the rights of minorities. I was worried about the rights of women. I was worried about my rights. I was worried about what was going to happen to my nation. I'm actually an extremely patriotic person. I really, represented America when I went to places like Hungary. And although
Right.
we do a lot of bad stuff all over the world, I'm like, the Peace Corps is one of those great things that we do to help others, which talks about equality, and, capitalism can be managed in such a way that it's fair. And I was extremely worried that our system would not continue, and that you and I would not have the free speech that we are enjoying right now. So a lot of it was just plain old worry. And I also realized at some point, very early on, as people contacted me, that people needed support,
Mm.
that people needed to know. And people say this to me all the time. I got so worried. I'm watching these activities happen that are extremely dangerous and unconstitutional, etc. I'm watching people say really vile things. The system is being used to dox people, physically harm them, and they needed to know that it is going to work out, and they also needed to know that there's a reason why this is happening. If people are just suffering pointlessly, that's absolute hell. If people are suffering, but they know they're working through a process that will eventually benefit us all, then they are, mm, reasonably happy. Yeah, it's a struggle, but if it's a struggle and we're working toward the betterment of ourselves and our society, it's very much worth it. And so I knew that there'd be blowback. I knew that it would be hard. I knew there'd be members of my family who would be angry.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
I said, it was almost like a Fisher cut bait moment. It's like, Dave, if you really believe in these issues, if you really believe in this, it is up to you to do something. It's not up to you to sit and complain. It's up to you to do whatever you can to change things. And perhaps these things could all merge. You could have a job and you could say, and be helpful at the same time.
Right. I was just thinking as you had talked about, being patriotic. I think that a lot of readers that did this at this time are very patriotic. I think it is kind of it's the way they could help the country in some way. Because if you're a community organizer, if you're a get out the vote person, whatever your role was. But I think this was our role kind of in this stew that was going on. It was a way to our way to help, I think. And it still continues, right? It's still continuing, but are trying to help, and as we are working through what we're working through now. But yeah, again, I feel like it will be okay. I feel like this is a crazy it's a crazy ride. It really has been a
Yes.
crazy ride, right?
Yeah, yeah. And on so many levels, I mean, especially on a very personal level. I haven't talked to one person whose family is not divided in politics. And I always tell people, like, I moved to Australia. I'm so much more able to do this from here because I have no idea what my neighbors' political persuasions are. I have
Mm,
literally zero idea who they vote for. And it doesn't matter. Nobody really cares about that. It's like, could you water
yeah,
my lawn and I'll water yours? That's
right.
honestly how it is. It's a very down to earth sort of place,
Right.
where they frankly would not tolerate Trump for 5 minutes. They would just absolutely not tolerate him. The irony is, Fox News does come from here, so there are
Yeah.
conservative elements, but you know, what's our power here? And I just noticed that certain people have no power presently. You and I don't have any power to control the media. We
Right.
don't have any power politically for the most part because we don't have a lot of money. We can't donate $1 billion.
Right.
What can we do? We can protest. But here's this new medium.
Right.
Here's this technology which has bad aspects, but we can present things on this technology and sort of even the scale a little bit.
Hmm.
And I do think there is a divine feminine that has sort of put itself in there and asked us to lead and to move up. And when I say divine feminine, that does not exclude men. It is just
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
a sense of
It's
balance.
an
And
energy. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, we don't have to be 100% capitalist. We could also be in relationship to others at the same time.
Yeah. I love that. Um, so when you channel for Moonride and what kind of channeling would you call that? Is it because it's not trans channeling, right? Because it's so interesting because it is like it the as the viewer, you feel like it's almost like you're closing your eyes watching a movie and you're just explaining the movie that you're seeing. Is
Yeah.
that kind of what it's like when you're in it? And
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd say it's maybe one step even before that. It's kind of like I ask a question, what's going to happen, and then I'll get a picture. And
Mhm.
in the beginning, I wasn't necessarily great at understanding those pictures. I look back at like some of the videos now, and I'm like, oh my God, that's what I was talking about.
Right.
Another reason that I did this is that I just wanted to kind of put myself out there and see if I was accurate, but also to show people, here's me learning how to channel, you can too. And here's me learning, oh, mistake, 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 and here's me learning more, and all of those things. I really wanted people to watch my trajectory because it's their trajectory too. But it is like much as you described. I ask a question, see a picture, and then I try to interpret what that was. And that is, what I did for Moonride for many years. I kept being, I knew it was not trance because I've seen people do
Right.
trance work. And
Right.
I was, just being very careful, or really, really, really careful before I did that. I did not want to do it. And, it's a lot to ask to give up your body for spirit.
Hmm.
You want to be careful when you do that. And so I was very, very carefully wound up, Now I had the great fortune of winding up with a group called the V Group. And the
Hmm.
V Group, was just brought me to another level. And it's a bunch of people who are channeling at the same time, all remarkable people, kind of channeling in their different way. And it was like here were the support staff that I needed just in case I was going the wrong direction. They were, sophisticated enough to pull me back if something unpleasant happened. But nothing unpleasant happened. We wound up almost like an intergalactic, sort of ambassadors meeting each other in this place. And each one of us was, meeting a different character, but some of us would be inspired to channel depending on the time. And I watched people who'd never channeled before channel, and that trance channeling, I always describe it this way. It's like I'm in a movie theater or a theater, a play theater, and it's like I step aside and I'm in the wings. I'm almost like that guy on the, pulling the ropes.
Yeah.
And then, it's like my head kind of comes down and then I just start. And it's like, it's different because I'm not thinking about it. I often don't know what I've said. And if you ask me an hour later what that was about, I'll have to go watch that video because I don't really remember. And
Right.
in the moment, I'll catch bits and pieces. And I think this is important to know, because you do want to be in your body. You do want to, if there's a danger, obviously you need to, the room's on fire, your
Right.
humanness, do something. So, it's also very important to be in a safe a place as possible. But,
Mhm.
once you feel comfortable doing that, and again, it's really nice to have people supporting you who know what they're doing. But once you've done that, it really is like someone's showing up, and I'm not going to say taken over, but I'm going to say sort of sharing my
Mhm.
body for a
Mhm.
moment, and then they are speaking. One thing I will recommend for anybody who does this work is it should feel good in your heart.
Mm.
I think that's the divine feminine. All of those things we were taught math in school, we were taught all these things in school, but no one taught us the wisdom of the heart. And I
Mm.
think most women innately know that wisdom. I was not there. I had to really, really learn it. Like, if it's just like if you go to a bar and somebody's creepy and you just feel creeped out, you can excuse yourself. Um, that feeling is really powerful.
Right.
It does help you make decisions all the time.
Mhm.
It helps CEOs choose who to hire. It's not about the resume, it's about what they're feeling and just admitting what they are feeling. Because I had a long
Right.
time where I'm like, no, 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 I don't believe that. It's just me. Um, it's very important. If there's no reason to channel anything that doesn't feel good. That is, if you ever get a feeling of just even mediocrity, just go, no, not today, thank you. Maybe we're rude. Just go,
Right.
that's not for me today. And then you'll find another doorway, which will be, and then you test it out and go, how do I feel about that doorway before I walk through? I feel pretty good, right?
Right.
I always ask guides to show me something that lets me know they come from the light.
Mhm.
And often, when I'm helping people to channel, I tell them to do that. And I always say, I don't mean to be rude, but I got to be really sure that this is, and they always show me something, or show my clients something from the light. And if they don't, it's just kind of that this is not what we should do today. Maybe we need to go
Right.
to healing, or
Mhm.
maybe we need to try something else today. This is not, on the rare occasions when that happened, then it was just like, yeah, I'm getting a message. We need to do a healing ceremony today before we do any channeling.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
And I love that that this is all playing out so people can see it, that you're kind of your evolution as a a I'd say a reader, but a channel is kind of playing out for everyone to see. Like you said, you kind of started with it with Moonride kind of, and then you kind of went into quantum healing, which to me, that seems like I'd never thought of it before, but it really is a stepping stone into trans channeling, because
Mhm.
I know I did a session with you,
Yeah.
and the weirdest thing ever, but it really was. It was such an interesting experience. Not at all what I thought. Not at all. And I always tell people you need to be on some level prepared, because it's just so different. And
Uh-huh.
but that feeling of, it was weird. It was like I was talking, but also like I was listening as well. I was
Yeah.
in two places at once. It's almost like I had a dual experience. And then
Mm.
when you at the end, when you kind of like you count down and you're coming back, I really could feel like I felt like my soul was coming back. There was something coming more. I was more embodying myself than I had been. It was a
Mhm.
really just a very, very interesting but completely surprise experience. But to me, I'm like, now knowing that evolution that you've had into from just, kind of conscious channeling, I guess you call it, into the quantum healing and then into full kind of trans channeling. To me, it seems like that makes perfect sense to me,
Yeah.
knowing kind of
Yeah.
what it is. But um so when you started, what made you get involved with the V group? What made you know it was time to do something like that?
You know, this is one thing that I'm sure you'll notice really interesting about your work is that you will have clients guide you. And then
Mm-hmm.
clients will just say, while I'm teaching someone to channel, they'll say, Dave, I'm being told there's a message for you. And the message is go do this. And I had one client say, "Look, Dave, you should try this V group," and so I did, and I just joined the next week. And it just, people tell you, I've read lots of books. You don't necessarily want to, you can't read everything, but there was just something about that message, something about that client. She seemed, among other things, really wise and
Mm-hmm.
a very unassuming person, and so. The and if you look at my videos and you watch V Group, you can see her. But the I just find that spirit guides, and you do have to be somewhat discerning because maybe this is just an excuse to fool around today, Dave. Refocus. But so she was just an example of guidance just coming through.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really true now that I do quantum healing. And I'm not necessarily allowed to call it quantum healing because I do it online. I talked to Dolores and she says, that's fine, Dave. But the organization that is does want to follow certain rules, and I can see
Right.
why. I'm really kind of developing my own version of hypnosis, past life regression type stuff. But I was, first of all, just really inspired. The minute I saw Dolores Cannon, I was like, wow. And the minute I started looking at it, I started to realize it's like when you were doing that channeling, when you were doing the healing, the hypnosis,
Uh-huh.
and I'm doing it, I'm also channeling. So it is just this fascinating thing where I just know what questions to ask. And
Yeah,
I just,
you're great at. I mean, I do have to tell people right now, you are great at it,
oh,
and
thank you.
absolutely, if they want to do it, you're great at doing what you do. You really
Thanks
are.
so much. I appreciate it. But it was, I mean, it was fantastic to do it with you, of course. You were having that whole, this can't be true. This is imposter syndrome, even in hypnosis. You were experienced like, I can't be this person. This often, really happens very often. And
Mhm,
uh, it's, um, it's really a great process because both of us are channeling,
mhm.
and I could just see you learning, going into that direction where there it is more like trance work, and I could just feel myself doing this at the same time, going, oh yeah.
Right.
And I can start now to anticipate where the client's going. So they'll be hemming, no, can't be, and I'll be like, come on, I'm not going to tell anyone. Just tell me. And it's great because it is that private process, right? You aren't doing it in front of a bunch of people, so you go to regions that you wouldn't necessarily go to before, and it's also um, recorded. So when people see themselves talking about the past life in incredible detail, that is when they're really like very much, it moves them, I think, a great deal rather than somebody saying their future. They are explaining not necessarily the future, but the present and the past to such a degree that it helps you with the future. It's a wonderful process, but I definitely feel guided.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad it is recorded because it takes a while to process what comes through. You
Mhm.
do have to integrate it because a couple of things that came through, in fact, it's things Dolores Cannon talks about when she talks about you get to be everything. You get to be a rock and you get to be a tree and you get to, and I don't know, oh, you probably don't remember in mine, but I had this part where I was blending with a star and blending with a flower, and I finally got it. I'm like, that's what that is it's the energy blending so that you fully understand it. So if you
Yes.
blend with the energy, you fully understand a star, you fully understand a flower, and that's what that is. It's not, and um at the beginning when I heard myself say, oh, when they said how many lifetimes have you had, I was like almost 2000. But that's because every experience like that was considered a life, because
Yeah.
you fully understand something when you blend with its energy.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Whenever I'm just
But at the
remembering
time
that.
I was like, it was mind blowing. And so the
Yeah.
fact that it's recorded is so helpful because you need that time to integrate what you learn.
Yeah. And they say always watch them 3 times, at
Okay.
least 3 times, because
Yeah.
you need to do that sort of integration. And
Hmm.
it's always important to talk to people afterwards, say, hey, what do you remember? So that you
Hmm.
can help acclimate them to this world. It's just that you know, there's not really that many other experiences where you are so totally immersed in your case in being a flower.
Right.
And you can't explain
Right.
what it's like to be a flower, but you can
Right.
feel that. And it just tells you so much about consciousness. It
Hmm.
really does expand what your ideas are. And, you know, we often feel very limited as humans. We are limited in some ways as
Hmm.
humans, right? And we have these limitations and also these expectations as we go through life. But it's not always like that. And I think it's really helpful too for people to know that, to see what happens after they pass. That's one thing that I always, and Dolores always says, is extremely important. Let them go to the other side. Be sure they're in that lifetime and not
Right.
this lifetime, because you don't want to see that. But
Right.
make sure that they go through that, because they're like, oh, yeah. And it's often different for different people. So
Hmm.
it's like, oh yeah, here's the boat. I'm just gonna get in the boat. The water's so translucent and beautiful, and then they'll start to understand everything about the lifetime. And they'll be like, oh wow, yeah. Not need to ask the question, what was the purpose of that lifetime? What did you learn? And sometimes they're really hard lessons. Sometimes they're like, I should have been a better husband,
Mm,
right? Or I
mm,
shouldn't have been so focused on money, or I took my distress and I put it in the wrong place.
mm,
And sometimes the lies will be like, wow, that was really terrible and rough. And the people will come out and say, I'm completely happy with that lifetime. Yeah, I was
mm,
totally poor, but I did what I was supposed to do. I did
mm.
those three things that I was supposed to do in that lifetime, and I'm totally satisfied. So
Right,
it's often, there's always a lesson.
right,
Every lifetime, there's always a lesson. There's always things that we have to learn. And usually there's things like, well, you could have done a little better here, but you did really well here. Almost always that is the case. There's always stuff that we're going to go work on. But you also feel a little bit like you're in control.
right.
So people will go, if you ever read Newton or listen to Newton, he does things about past lives. He's
Mhm.
really interested in that space between lives where you're making the decision
Right,
about what I'm going to do next. But you have advisors, but you really are picking some of the challenges, not all, but some of the challenges that you're going to face. Now, and I say that, I don't want to make anybody feel responsible for the things that have happened to them in their life. It is
right,
not like that. It's not like, oh, here's your karma, you must suffer, and it's your problem, and you can't get angry at that person. There is free will. People do make decisions. And when people do things that are wrong, you do need to hold them accountable, and you can be
right,
angry at that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not just your fate. There's a sort of space in the universe where free will and choices meet that
mhm,
I cannot explain to you because I'm just a human. So there's no karma here in the sense of how we in the Western world understand it. It really is a little bit more like I'm going to choose some lessons. Some of us have chosen some really tough lessons. I am
mhm.
responsible for my own decisions, my own reactions to things. I'm not responsible for the decisions and reactions of others.
Right,
So here I am with what I've got. What do I do? And often it's never about material wealth. Like literally every single person is just like, oh God, I had a castle. God, Sheila, for example, it's just like, let it burn. I've got my shelf. All I need. God, I just like to relax and stop being this princess all the time. It's like every single lifetime, nobody ever goes, oh, I made $1 million. I was successful.
right,
They
right. Such a good point.
sometimes they are like, hey, I had to keep working and manage this business, or 20 people were going to starve to death.
Right,
Right. I've definitely had those people who are like, I had to be tough, I had to be strong, I had to say no to my employees sometimes, I had to manage them, because otherwise the business wasn't going to work, and it was 1930s and we were all going to starve.
right.
So that is definitely in the cards, but nobody reflects on the accumulation of wealth as a success
Mm,
exclusively. It might be part of a plan, but it's
right,
never about that. It's almost always about human relationships and being
right,
like, well, and usually, again, they're not horrible. They're just like, I could have been a little bit more like this, or maybe I experienced my own limitations, and we'll go again, and I'll learn a new aspect of relationship.
right,
And don't beat yourself up out there if you've made mistakes. That is absolutely part of the plan. For you to make mistakes and go, there's no reason to dwell on the mistakes and let them guide your life. It's just absolutely not helpful to do that. If you ever made a mistake in your life, that was supposed to happen. And if you were not making mistakes, there'd be no reason for you to be here on Earth.
right,
You'd be one of
right.
the guides.
Yes.
We can't all be guides.
I think too, especially seeing how, you know, after it's interesting to me when you leave a life, and I'm talking about doing when you're in the quantum healing, you leave a life, how quickly you're able to how quickly your perspective changes. And
Yeah.
you kind of just say, well, actually, I learned this and I should have done this. You definitely, you aren't in it anymore the way that you are in here. And that made me think, I think that a lot of times when we're planning our lives and come back and everything, I think so often are, we just, how do I say it? Like when your eyes are bigger than your stomach, it's like you think you're going to do all this stuff and then you get here and you're like, oh my God, it's so hard here. Why am I here? What's going on? I think we forget because when you are out of that life, you really do leave it, and you just aren't connected with it in the same way anymore. And you can see the perspective and you kind of just leave it and that's it. And you get what you take along with you, what you learned, what you got out of it, and that's really it. And so I do think that sometimes we pack our plate thinking, oh, I can do it, it's so easy, and then we get here and we're like, oh my God, why did I do this? It's so hard. Why am I back here?
Absolutely. And these tasks from a distance do not seem overwhelming. Oh, dude, just clean your house. What's the big deal? Well, it is a big deal when you're working 9 to 5 and you've got
Right.
all of these things and you have to move. I mean, you can't anticipate from the other side how difficult it is to move.
Right.
Okay. You know where you're going to be tomorrow. If you're on the other side, you're going to be in the light. But I don't know how successful I'm going to be finding my apartment. Of course I'm stressing because I don't know what's going to happen. And
Mhm.
I think that is the key thing, is just on the other side, you know what's going to happen. Here, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if the decisions we're making are right, or what the
Yeah.
consequences are going to be. We're going to fail sometimes. It
Mhm.
does. It is. They say that there are lots and lots of beings that would like to be embodied. They would like to become humans, and they're just lining up saying, please, please, I want to feel love and hate, right? And they
Right.
want to know that, but the list is the line is long. Okay, there's a
Right.
lot of people waiting. So in some sense, we're the lucky ones that got to be embodied and feel all these emotions, good and bad. But of course, once you get there, it's like that ride at Disneyland, when you're in the middle of the air and your stomach's starting to churn. You're like, oh, awesome.
Why am I on here?
What was I thinking when I got on that revolution? Um, I found recently that at my age, there's some rides I just don't want to go on anymore.
And don't you have the feeling too that being here at this time was a big deal? I think I mean, you want to talk about lining up for this. I really think this was the time. Being here at this time was really a big deal for people to
Yeah.
come, and I got to be there. I got to see I got to see this happen. And I think again, not realizing that the difficult hard parts, but there are some amazing things that we're seeing on the earth at this
Yes.
time as well. The level of kindness and help and generosity and understanding and all of these things, it's definitely a push and pull. But I, when you said that, I thought, man, I bet the lines were extremely long to try to get in at this time, because it's such an
Mhm.
amazing time.
There's so much that we are learning. And I would say to anyone who does this work or does not, you are here at this time for a reason. If only just to watch it and experience it and see it. And those little teeny things, perhaps you're fighting with your sibling, those little teeny things that you do to go beyond judgment and just to try to do your best in the face of difficult times. Those people who go, door to door, trying to, convince people to vote blue, and they have to. There's a lot of blowback that's happening for those poor people, and still trying to remain in your integrity and be kind and be honest to others. All of us are really working overtime, even if it's a simple thing, to move this a dial forward. And it really is about all of those little things. It's
Mhm.
not about the big drama that we see on TV. It is those small movements of, well, I'm really busy, but I can help here. I could respond in an angry way, or I could respond by giving my own personal experience. And I and this is just absolutely true of me. I could stop fighting with people and go, well, ask this question, right? And you're far more likely to get some movement on a person's opinion if you ask a question, or if you remind them of human experience. Like you just say,
Mhm.
hey, this is what I've seen. This is what's happened to me. Um, I've asked the question, well, you call yourself a Christian. Okay. Um, I think Christ is awesome. And if Christ were here today and a bunch of hungry children were coming from South America, running from drug dealers, waving American guns, what would Jesus do?
Mhm.
And there's nothing to argue about there.
Right.
And when you're doing that, you're not saying you're not a Christian. You're asking and you're making a person reflect a little bit on that. Um, all of us are doing something like that all the time, every single day, every single
Yeah.
moment. We are handling that. And
Yeah.
it's sometimes very subtle. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be these melodramatic things that make them important.
Hmm.
We just see people on TV and, or media, and we are pushed to believe that the dramatic thing is more important than our experience. And it is not. It is part of our experience.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And I I didn't want to, I can't let you go without um asking you about your new channel
Hmm.
and what made you decide to have a separate channel where you kind of did the work, the V work and that kind of thing. And also because I mean the information on that channel, it is mind-blowing. It's amazing. What has surprised, what is some of the information that surprised even you? Or where you're like, what in the world? But
Mhm.
first say why you started a separate channel to do
Yeah.
this work.
Well, it's interesting that you brought this up because I am not sure. I'm still not sure about the separate channel.
Mhm.
I thought, well, I'm going to have this, regular channeling and political stuff on one channel, and I will do the trans channeling on another. But a bunch of problems have emerged. One of which is there's a bunch of other places with a similar name, so people are having a lot of trouble finding
Oh, okay.
pyramid, or there's a lot of pyramid stuff out there. So there's one problem, and it's also so much work. I've
Oh,
had
I
this
bet. That's what I was
getting the
thinking. I'm
video on
like,
the
that
wrong
is a
channel and be
lot.
like, oh, I gotta do it. Um,
That's a
the
lot
new
of work.
channel requires tons of editing. So if I do a 2.5 hour session with
Right.
someone, it's like at least 2.5 hours time editing out personal information or whatever. So I am not 100% certain that I will keep it, whether I will change it, or whether I will put most of the stuff on my old channel. I still haven't decided, but that
Right.
was the rationale for doing it. As to what really blew my socks off was Jesus. I have to tell you, did not come from a Christian background at all. And I want to 100% say that there are no deities that are better than the other. You know, Jesus and Buffalo Corn Woman are absolutely on the same plane. I don't care if it's Muhammad or whatever leader there is. They're all there chatting together and going, well, who's best for this person today? But it really surprised me that Jesus started to show up. And I read Jesus and the Essenes, which is Dolores Cannon, but he keeps showing up. I keep having situations where people are channeling and it turns out that they are Jesus's sister, or one of the disciples. That happened yesterday, and again he's like, I can't believe this, can't possibly be true, I can't believe this. But I'm like, I already know because I've already got a bunch of messages coming to me that this person inadvertently said. That has really blown my socks off. And I think really changed me to stop being so like righteous, lefty, you are wrong, kind of, and start to be a little bit softer and understand where these people are coming from, and why do they believe what they believe, um, and who am I to judge? That was like another
Mm,
really an important theme that I think um, he has brought to me. It's just this, you could be born as Jesus, you could be born as Judas. You both have
mm,
a role to play. And yeah, Judas is not irresponsible for his decisions. He is responsible for the decisions. He is responsible for his own evolution. And, you know, there are a bunch of mitigating factors that we could talk about, but it's really entirely true that, Donald Trump was born to be Donald Trump. He was born to be this character. He is slated to be this character so that we can all respond. He is necessary. The Donald Trumps of the world existed before him. They have, plagued the American system for many years, in my opinion. It is just, he is the image that
right.
we can identify as all of the, all of the things that we don't like. So I think one
Yeah.
thing that has really changed for me is I am a good deal, I haven't totally stopped being self-righteous, but I'm a lot less self-righteous. And just like a sense of, when I was first encountering Jesus, I was very, oh my God, I'm oh my God, I'm genuflecting. And he kept, would you please just relax? It's just like, I'm an old friend. Let's just, he always shows up with dice. He says, just roll the dice. Let's just play a game. Stop being so reverent, right? I want you to get the
Right.
message here, but it's not about me. It's like, it's about the message. Stop being so
Mm,
reverent and stop being
mm,
so hard on yourselves. That's one thing that I would tell people too. Don't be so tough on yourselves. People make mistakes. Jesus made mistakes. And it's not the stuff in the book at all,
right. Right.
right? It is, if you now I can read the Bible and see, oh, this is what he was really saying, but there's a bunch of stuff in there that has nothing to do with him.
Right.
Um, the Old Testament has nothing to do with Jesus. He came to change that testament. So
Mhm.
I would say that's a great, many years of shamanism have brought me to the important point that the earth is magic and that the nature is magic and that mother earth can do all of these things. And for many years I explored that. What totally surprised me is that something would come through from a traditional religion, although it is not the traditional religion.
Right. And because I love that too. I saw that on your channel, and I thought, it, it is amazing. And I also think that you know, there was this idea of the second coming, but I thought, I wonder if this is how the second coming is playing out, is through all of these different people, having him come in through different people. If that is what the second coming is, it's
Yes.
not literally him coming back as Jesus saying, here I am again. It's
Mhm.
about all of these messages coming through in all of these different, yeah. Is that what you think?
100%. And I
Yeah.
have been told that Jesus will not come through again as a human, that this is how he communicates. And again, I want to say, like, we don't, it's just, he is one figure on a panoply of guides that
Right.
people are listening to. So, in a sense, when you are channeling Shiva or, you know, um, medicine corn woman, from a Native American perspective,
Hmm.
that is also the second coming. It just that
Right.
we couldn't really explain that a couple of thousand years ago. We couldn't explain how that would look. It's
Right.
just also the second coming is this divine feminine. It is the understanding of the heart. It is
Hmm.
understanding that relationships are more important than money, even though you cannot live without money. And
Yeah.
that is the divine feminine is Jesus, as far as I'm concerned. The whole
Hmm.
gestalt of all of the people's energy as we're trying to move forward and be, reasonably kind to one another. That is the second coming.
Right. I love that. Well, on that note, I mean, this has been so much fun, Dave. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us about all of this stuff. It's so enlightening, and I think it's so helpful for people to hear, so, your evolution, your arc, and what in how you still, this, when you get into the spiritual world, you just expand, and you just keep expanding. It's not something where you reach the thing and that's it. It's like,
Yes.
no, then it just leads to the next thing and then the next thing, and
Yeah.
it really is just this ever
Mhm.
growing expansion. Well, thank you so much, Dave. And can you tell people where they can get in touch with you? And I'm going to have all your information in the description, but just where they can get in touch with you and what you offer still.
Well, my website is Moonride, so it's www.moonride.com.au. I am in
Mhm.
Australia, so there's an
Australia.
AU attached to that, and that will show you the different things that I do. And there are my two channels. One of them is Moonride and Pyramid 4. Do take a look at that if you can. I try to point people to Pyramid 4, but if you take a look at them, it does require a good deal of dedication because they're a bit longer. But
Absolutely.
really, really fascinating stuff on there.
Yeah, it is fascinating. So, all right. Well, thanks, Dave. Thanks so much. And thanks
Thank you,
everybody
Sarah.
for coming. We'll see you again next Sunday. Bye-bye.
Bye bye, everyone.